One of the most interesting aspects of the ancient world is magic, specifically the Kolossoi of ancient Greece. Kolossoi are essentially voodoo dolls that are meant to bind deities, spirits, and people. When it came to deities, also known as gods such as Zeus, bindings were used by other deities to prevent them from leaving a place or object and overall prevent them from doing bad deeds. For example, a famous story is Hephaestus, the god of fire, bound Aphrodite, the goddess of love, and Ares, the god of war, to the bed and delivered them to Olympus to shame their relationship. Kolossoi were eventually associated with Hephaestus for this reason. For spirits and ghosts, Kolossoi were a form of funerary customs to keep them safe in the travels to the underworld and not become stuck in the mortal lands. For people, it was often used for rivals and enemies to curse them. It can be anything to make them lose a battle, a chariot race, or even death. In contrast, they can bind lovers using erotic kolossoi to forever be faithful and to destroy a relationship out of jealousy. Finally, they are often used for protection by burying them into walls of buildings like temples to defend families from the enemy. The oldest kolossoi were found in 450 BC, four in each box, and they were made by professional magicians. Kolossoi could be made with almost anything malleable that could be carved or shaped, mainly wood, stone, clay, and wax. Personally, I decided to attempt to create a kolossoi using clay. The tools I used were a flat sculpting tool, bronze wire, and needles. I also decided to make one for a potential enemy. I didn't have any real clay, so I decided to use the closest thing, Play-Doh, and paint it later. First, I collected a small bunch of the material and rounded it out to get the surface smooth. I pinched a section of it to create the head, and once it was a good size, I began rolling out the body, making sure the shoulders were still wide and the waist was tempered to make it realistic. I continued to roll until the body was long enough to form legs because I wanted to do it in one go, which is what each causeway seemed to be constructed like. I then took my flat carving tool and split the body's lower half to form legs, then rolled and smoothed them out. Each example I saw of the causeway appeared to be all connected as one, so instead of making feet individually, I bent the ends of the legs, shaped them, and carved in ankles to make the feet. I go back with the tools and create two slits into the body to cut out arms. I also quickly flattened the body, which was what helped leave space to write the name of the victim and sometimes curses. One of the arms ended up being shorter than the other, but Kolossoi were shaped strangely, with some limbs being abnormally larger than others, specifically the hands, feet, and genitals. I decided to add more clay to the arms as hands to further their size dramatically. They also used to bound the body by placing the right hand on the mouth and the left hand on the anus, sometimes set in place with a nail. Another common feature was to twist the head to be backwards or placed on the left of the shoulder. They also would twist other limbs like feet and hands. If they were not twisting, they were purposely hacking the head off and burying it separately from the body to prevent it from rejoining. I decided to focus on carving the body more realistically, so I began shaping facial features into the face and cutting out ears. Kolossoi were often made to look similar to the victim, but since I did not have an actual enemy, I simply shaped it into an average face. I used my hands for this, and when it would not smoothen out, I add water to my fingers, which helped. I also used a spoon and the carving tool to make more dramatic indents and smooth it out more. If I used normal clay, it would be done in a similar fashion, but if I were to use stone, wood, or metal, I would have had more carving tools and maybe even add heat to the metal. For wax, they would create a mold before adding it in to dry. Clay in ancient times was definitely not purple like my Play-Doh, so I used acrylic paint in burnt sienna to make it similar to a natural clay color. Another popular way to bound the figure was using bronze wire. The arms would be tied together, sometimes behind the back. The legs would be tied as well. The neck would have a choker, and sometimes an erotic amulet would be attached to it. The most fun I had in the whole process had to be poking the needles through the clay. The Grecians would insert needles or bronze nails through the body in order to paralyze it. The most common areas were through the eyes, ears, and mouth to paralyze cognitive facilities. The heart was to restrain will, and the limbs would lose strength. It was often that they would use the lucky 17 for the amount of nails or needles, and so I did that. I cut my hair off. Unlike me, the Grecians would use the hair of their enemy and even the fingernails to attach to the Kolossoi's belly button. This helps transfer their DNA into the figure and make it easier to curse them. When the doll was finished, the maker would rough it up by burning it with fire, melted, kicked, or stomped on it. Finally, Grecians would write the name of the victim on the left side of the body. They would use red ink to write either their name or the initials of their name and their mother's. For example, a son whom mother bore. I decided to write Bruno. There could also be a binding formula written on or around the Kolossoi, which was a short phrase or sometimes written backwards to cause confusion. Some examples are I hereby bind an N, which will be the name of the person, and may an N be defeated. Once finished, the Kolossoi may be molded around a papyrus with a written spell, or there could be stored in an enclosed box of some sort that would also have spells and binding written on it. The spells often were associated with the gods and goddesses. For example, I commit an end to the gods, to Ge, Hecate, and Persephone, and I bind an end born of an end in your presence, Hermes Katakos, may she be restrained in hand and foot and body. They would be disposed of by burial in graveyards, sanctuaries, or uncultivated land. Sometimes they'd be thrown in deep water, like the ocean. The only ways for the Kolossoi to be unbound were if the maker destroyed them or if the victims found them and unbind them correctly. Overall, the process of creating a Kolossoi doll was very fun, therapeutic, and satisfying. I faced some troubles with sculpting it to look natural, which I don't think I succeeded in, and when I added the wire it cut into the clay, I realized that the Grecians would first let the clay dry before adding it in the needles. I understand why they used to make these dolls, since it could really help let some anger out.